with your best shot. When I became governor, South Carolina was hurting. We had all our jobs in the textile basket. When the textiles went overseas, so went our jobs. So we had 11% unemployment. We had thousands of people on welfare, and South Carolina was the butt of the jokes. So we got to work. By the time I left being governor, we were building planes with Boeing. We were building more BMWs than any place in the world. We brought in Mercedes-Benz, we brought in Volvo. We had 5 international tire companies, and they were referring to us as the beast of the Southeast, which I love. We announced jobs in every county in the state. We moved our unemployment rate from 11% to 4%. We moved thousands of people from welfare to work. And we acknowledged the truth. We said if you have to show a picture ID to buy Sudafed, if you've got to show picture ID to get on a plane, you should have to show picture ID to protect the integrity of the election process. And we passed voter ID in South Carolina. We passed one of the toughest illegal immigration laws in the country. And by the time I left, we were named the friendliest state in the country, we were named the most patriotic state in the country, and we were named the #2 state in the country people were moving to. And then I got a call to go to the United Nations. And my honest answer was, I don't even know what the UN does, I just know everybody hates it, right? I wasn't wrong. But when you get the chance to serve your country, you jump. And so when I got to the UN, it was really important. I wanted countries to know what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. And so we got to work. We moved ourselves out of the Iran deal. We moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And I negotiated with Russia and China to pass the largest set of sanctions against a country in a generation against North Korea. But the most important thing that we did, so we took the kick me sign off of our backs, and America was respected again at the UN. Now I'm running for president, and I don't need to tell you how bad things are. You don't have to turn on the news to see it. You feel it when you're at the grocery store. We feel it when we're filling up our cars with gas. If you're mortgaged, you see the interest rates going up. Rent is high. It's really bad. And I would love to be able to say, Biden did that to us. And while he sent us down this socialism creep that's dangerous, that we have to put an end to, I've always spoken in hard truths, and I'm going to do that with you today because you deserve it. Our Republicans did that to us too. You go back and look at that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill that they passed with no accountability, that has now expanded welfare. We have almost 100 million Americans on Medicaid, 42 million Americans on food stamps. That's a third of our population. And did Republicans try and make it right? No. They doubled down and opened up earmarks for the first time in 10 years, pushing through 7,000 of them last December. Want to know how they spent your money? $30 million on an honors college in Vermont, $10 million to tear down a hotel in Alaska, $7.5 million on a courthouse in Colorado, and the list goes on. In this 2024 appropriations budget that's being debated, Republicans put in there $7.4 billion worth of pet projects and earmarks. Democrats put in $2.8 billion. You tell me who the big spenders are now. All while 1 in 6 American families can't pay their utility bill, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, 50% of our families can't afford diapers, they're spending $1,000 more per car per year in gas, $7,000 more a year just on our basic items. Something's got to give. Social Security goes bankrupt in 10 years. Medicare goes bankrupt in 8. Then you go and you look at our education system. Everybody wants to blame COVID for education. We had problems with education way before COVID. 67% of our 8th graders in our country It's probably more than that now. This was even pre-COVID. 67% of 8th graders in our country are not proficient in reading or math. Think about that. Over 80% of our 8th graders aren't proficient in history or civics. And now they've said that our 13-year-olds are scoring the lowest levels they've scored in math and reading in decades. We've got to take care of our kids. Yet you're seeing all of these other distractions that are going into education, whether it's girls playing in boys' sports, whether it's DEI, whether it's CRT. Then you go and you look at the fact that we've got a serious border issue, right? Complete lawlessness on the border. And let me tell you, I've been to the border, and I didn't pull a Kamala go and come back. I went 400 miles down that border. You're not ready for what I saw. Mounds of clothes, mounds of shoes, paraphernalia, rape areas that the women and girls have to walk through. When you get up in the morning, you get your coffee and you watch the news. When these ranchers get up in the morning, they get their coffee and they go see if anyone died crossing the fence. They pick up whatever little kids were left behind and turn them over to Border Patrol. I met with multiple sheriffs, and the sheriff said before 7 a.m. they round up whatever illegal immigrants they can find. They turn them over to Border Patrol. Border Patrol documents them and releases them until their court date years from now. And when I asked Border Patrol about their jobs, they said, "You want to know what we do? We're glorified babysitters. They don't let us do our jobs." 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed that border. We had enough fentanyl cross the border last year that would kill every single American. Number one cause of death for adults 18 to 45, fentanyl. And don't think for a second China doesn't know what they're doing when they send it over. And then I'll tell you, my parents always raised me, you take care of those who take care of you. I'm going to ask you if we're taking care of those who take care of us. Right now in America, 33,000 of our veterans are homeless. 1 in 3 veterans suffers from PTSD or thoughts of suicide. We lose 22 heroes a day to suicide. If a veteran needs to get a doctor's appointment, on average in this country, to get an appointment at the VA, it takes 29 days. Why 29? Because on the 30th day, they can go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. So midway through the 29 days, they get a call to reschedule, and it starts all over again. It's shameful how we treat our veterans. Now, any of those things could have been taken up by Congress, right? But what has Congress done for you lately? Nothing. It is why we have to have term limits in Washington. It's past time. It's past time. It's also why I think we need to have mental competency tests for anyone over the age of 75. Now, I want to make it really clear. I'm not being disrespectful when I say that. We all know sharp 75-year-olds. I mean, you can look at your own Senator Grassley. He could run circles around any of us. But then there's Joe Biden, right? These are people making decisions on major issues. These are people making decisions on our national security. They're making decisions on our children's future economy. We need to know they're at the top of their game. It doesn't feel like that right now. So, that's a lot of bad, right? It's hard to find anything good. But now I'm going to tell you what I told South Carolinians when I became governor. No more whining. No more complaining. Now we get to work. How do we fix it? When it comes to our economy, let's first talk about what's going on in the news right now. You've had this whole issue of a shutdown. And what the media wants you to do is pick a side. You know, are you with those that were trying to keep government open? Are you with those who were trying to shut government? I'm going to tell you the truth. It's the wrong conversation for you to even be thinking about. Congress one of their main jobs is to produce a budget. Congress has given a budget on time 4 times in the last 40 years. They're not doing their job 4 times in the last 40 years. You need a president that reminds them their job is to put a budget out before we even get to this point. So don't let them sit there and tell you, oh, I was on this side or I was on that side. No, that's the wrong thing. They should have given us a budget on time so we never got to this point. So you look at that situation and say, okay, how are we gonna do it? 1, I promise you we're gonna make sure they have a budget on time. But 2, let's look at what we're gonna do economically. The first thing we need to do is claw back the $500 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are out there.
Excuse me. You're talking a lot about some important issues, but how do you feel about Taylor Swift? Are you a fan of Taylor Swift?
I mean, can we get through this, and then you're welcome to ask a question after.
Could you just tell me if you're a yes or no? Are you?
We don't care about it.
I mean, nobody's gonna.
Okay. Swiftie or no?
Go.
So we're going to claw back the $500 billion of unspent COVID dollars. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, let's go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud that we know exist. 1 out of $7 was spent wrong and was fraudulent. If 8% of our budget is interest, quit borrowing. Cut up the credit cards. You have to balance a budget every day. I had to balance a...
Not even a Swiftie. Okay, Swiftie.
Welcome to campaign season. You know, I'll say this, while that has been a distraction, remember how blessed we are that we have freedom of speech in this country. My husband's a combat veteran. They fought for us to have that. So whether he wants to talk about Taylor Swift or not, God bless him, he's got the right to ask. He just needs to wait for everybody else and ask the question. So look, okay, reminder, we are gonna go back and claw back the $500 billion unspent. We're gonna go back and make sure that instead of go after all the fraudulent dollars, cut up the credit cards. They need to quit borrowing and start living within their means. But I just came out with an economic plan that is really gonna help, I think, middle America. What we're seeing right now is the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and there's not enough fight for middle America. And so what we wanna do is, the first thing we wanna do is eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. It will put more money in your pockets. We wanna cut middle class taxes and collapse those brackets. That way we can make sure that middle class has more money, but we're also making a tax system that's simpler and fair. You shouldn't have to pay an accountant to do your taxes. It should be simple enough that you know and are able to do that. Then let's go and look at the fact that we have to make sure that I will veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. We'll stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, and we'll eliminate the earmarks. We'll also make sure that they know if Congress does not give us a budget, they don't get paid, period. We are not going to pay them if they don't get us a budget. Let's stop all the corporate and special interest bailouts that are happening. Let's pull back Biden's $500 billion of green subsidies that are out there that are only making things more expensive for us. And let's go to a budget that, as an accountant, I know it's zero-based budgeting. You start at zero and you say, what do we have to have? and work your way up. The problem with what Congress is doing now is we have to honestly break the budget system. Because what they do is they take the budget they passed last year, they bring that forward this year, and they add more money to it. That's the wrong way to look at it. We have to go back and prioritize. So let's go back to zero-based budgeting. And then let's make sure that we bring freedom back to our country. Let's get a strong dollar. That's what the Fed is supposed to be working on. We need that to be the stability in our country. Let's make sure that we put spending caps in place so that they don't spend more than what the economy is growing. That's what every small business in America does. That's what they need to do. And let's also make sure that we focus on energy. When we open up our energy industry, when we do an all of the above approach, I don't want to just be energy independent. Let's be energy dominant. When we do that, a lot of prices are going to go down because everybody's paying for the cost of energy right now. So that's the budget situation. Now let's talk about education. We knew in South Carolina, if a child couldn't read by 3rd grade, they were 4 times less likely to graduate high school. We've got to get our kids reading again. So what we did in South Carolina was we started reading remediation programs. We brought in their parents. We set them back until we knew they could read. We need to do that across this country. We've got to get our kids reading or we're going to be in a world of hurt. Let's make sure no parent should ever have to wonder what's being said or taught to their child in the classroom. We need complete transparency in the classroom when it comes to our children. As a mom, I know parents have one job, and that's to make sure we do right by our children. That is why I think we need to have national school choice. Every parent needs to decide where they want their child to go to school. Every child deserves a good education, regardless of where they're born and raised. No child should be mandated on a school based on a zip code. And then let's start building things in America again. Let's put vocational classes back into our high schools. In South Carolina, we had apprenticeships. We taught our kids how to build the things we were making. Let's do that nationally. And the best way to do that is to make sure that we take a lot of the programs in the federal government and let's send them down to the states. Because what you'll do is you'll reduce the size of the federal government, but you empower the people in the states. So it's not just education. Think welfare, think healthcare, think all of those extra things that DC is doing. What about if we were in control of it? What about you as Iowans? You know what a great governor and a great legislature you have. Wouldn't you rather them make that decision for you than people in DC? That's what we need to be doing with that. And then when it comes to the border, we'll do what I did in South Carolina and we'll take it further. We will do a national E-Verify program that requires companies to have to prove who they're hiring and that they're here legally. We will also make sure that instead of those 87,000 IRS agents, let's put 25,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. It's very important that we let them do that. Let's defund sanctuary cities once and for all. It's about time that we did that. You saw what happened in Philadelphia recently on TV. Sanctuary city. We can't have our taxpayer dollars going to something lawless like that. Then let's make sure that we go back to the Remain in Mexico policy. Let's focus on the fact that instead of catch and release, let's go to catch and deport. That's how you will stop the bleeding. And when it comes to all of the cartels and what they're doing sending fentanyl, we need to send our special operation forces over to them, and we need to wipe the cartels out. We can't wait on Mexico to do this anymore. And when it comes to our veterans, you know, the media always shows, and we see on TV, when our loved ones are deployed, and you see the tears that are shed. And then we see when they come home, and you see the hugs and the blessings that they returned home safely to us. But that's the easy part. The hard part's when we actually get home. It's the transition that's tough. When my husband came home from Afghanistan, he couldn't hear loud noises. He couldn't be in crowds. Life had passed him by for that year he was gone, and the transition was tough. We can't just love our men and women when they're gone. we have to love them when they come back home too. Let's help them with that transition. Let's make sure we have telehealth so that they get the mental health care they need right when they need it. Let's let them use the doctor and hospital of their choice. They've earned that right. When it comes to GI benefits, let them use it for other things besides just education. And if you want to know how we're going to take care of veterans' health care, I think every member of Congress should have to get their health care from the VA. And you watch how fast we get that done. It'll be the best health care you've ever seen, I promise, I promise. So we've got the answers domestically. Now let's talk about national security. Did you ever think we'd look at the sky and see a Chinese spy balloon flying over us? It was a national embarrassment. You've got Russia invading Ukraine, you've got Iran building a bomb, you've got North Korea testing ballistic missiles, you've got China on the march. But make no mistake, none of that would have happened had we not had that debacle in Afghanistan. The idea that my husband and his military brothers and sisters who served there had to watch us leave Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night without telling our allies who stood shoulder to shoulder with us for decades because we asked them to be there. Think about what that told our friends. More importantly, think about what that told our enemies. And now we're facing the biggest threat we've faced since World War II. China has been planning war with us for years. And that's not me being dramatic. They're already here. They've already infiltrated. They bought 400,000 acres of U.S. soil, most recently near Grand Forks Air Force Base, where our most sensitive drone technology is. They bought the largest pork producer in the country, right here in Iowa. They're putting millions of dollars into universities, stealing our research, and spreading Chinese propaganda. You freaked out when there was a Chinese spy balloon? What about this? 90% of our law enforcement drones in America are Chinese. So think about all the mini spy balloons and the surveillance that they have right now. You've got the fact that there's certain technologies we never want China to have because they go and threaten America and they help China, the Chinese Communist Party, yet the Biden administration gave them 70% of those requests last year. Then you go and you look at the fact that we've got a spy base off the shores of Florida on Cuba. It's only a matter of time before they put Chinese military there. We can't let that happen. You look at the fact that we're looking at the fentanyl situation. We've lost more Americans than the Iraq, Afghanistan, and Vietnam wars combined. 75,000 Americans just last year. Then you look at what China's doing with their military. They've built up their military. They now have the largest naval fleet in the world. They have 350 ships. They'll have 400 ships in 2 years. We won't even have 350 ships in 2 decades. They're doing artificial intelligence. They're doing cyber. They're doing space. They've developed hypersonic missiles. We've barely gotten started. And now they're the lead developer of neurostrike weapons. Weapons engineered to disturb the brain activity of military commanders and segments of the population. That's who we're dealing with. You can't appease a communist party like that. Not when they're that focused, not when they're that clear on what they want to do. The only thing China's going to respond to is strength. So how do we deal with it? First thing is stop selling any U.S. soil to China and let's take back what they already purchased. They don't get to have it. We'll go to our universities and we'll say you either take Chinese money or you take American money, but the days of taking both are over. We'll get that Chinese infiltration out of our universities. We will blacklist all the technology that helps the Chinese Communist Party and not allow any more of that technology to go over there that can hurt us. And we'll go to China and we'll say, we are going to end all normal trade relations with you until you stop murdering Americans. And you watch how fast they stop that fentanyl flow, because they need America at the end of the day. I think you should give them that time before we move on. And then you go, when it comes to our military, we need a strong military. It's hugely important. Strong militaries don't start wars. Strong militaries prevent wars. But that doesn't mean you throw money at the Department of Defense. That means you pull down the bureaucracy, you get rid of the red tape, you make sure that the money that's there is going to the things that will modernize our military. The next war is not land, air, or sea. It's land, air, sea, artificial intelligence, cyber, and space. Let's get up, let's make sure that our men and women are ready. Let's make sure they have the equipment they needed. They have to stop playing favorites with defense companies, and they have to start doing what's in the best interest of our military. Because when I was at the United Nations, there was nothing that China, Russia, and Iran wanted less than for us to be energy independent or for us to have a strong military. Let's build it back. And let me tell you what doesn't build a strong military. Stop with all this ridiculousness like gender pronoun classes. It is demoralizing our military to have that. So we have the solution. Oh, let me say this because this is becoming more of a hotbed. I know there's a debate about whether we should be involved in Russia and Ukraine. Don't ever forget, before the Olympics, when President Xi and Putin held hands and named themselves unlimited partners. A win for Russia is a win for China. They know that. Putin has made it very clear that once he takes Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries. Then we're in a war. We are trying to prevent war. I don't want my husband or any other military members to have to go fight anywhere. So the way we do that is make sure we give them the equipment and the ammunition to win. They are doing incredibly well. But Biden has not done a good job explaining this to you. He owes it to you to let you know where that's being spent. I don't think we should give cash to any country. I've always believed in that. I think that we work with our European allies to give them the equipment and the ammunition to win. I don't think we put troops on the ground. But there is a way that we can defeat them. We know Putin just went for a bailout to North Korea with Kim Jong-un. They're getting drones from Iran. They're getting missiles from North Korea. They've raised the draft age in Russia to 65. Putin is now having to institute a draft, which he didn't want to do in the first place, so they're now doing that. We've defeated 50% of their defense forces. The Ukrainians have. What we have given is 3.5% of our defense budget. 11 European countries have given more than us, as they should. That's a small price to pay to prevent war. Don't give up now. We can't. This is about our security. Don't ever allow America to get into the position that we are so arrogant that we don't think we need friends. We always need friends. And we always need to have a president that has moral clarity. Moral clarity to know the difference between right and wrong. Moral clarity to know the difference between good and evil. So we have the solutions to get our country back on track, and we will do that. But the first thing we need to acknowledge as a country is we have to end this national self-loathing that has taken over. The idea that they say America's bad or rotten or racist. I was elected the first female minority governor in history. America's not racist, we're blessed. Our children need to know to love America. They need to be saying the Pledge of Allegiance when they start school every day. You know, a couple months ago, I dropped my husband Michael off at 4 a.m. for another year-long deployment. And I watched him and 230 soldiers pick up their 2 duffel bags of belongings to go to a country they'd never been, all in the name of protecting America. They're willing to sacrifice their lives and their families because they still believe in this amazing experiment that is America. So if they're willing to fight for us there, shouldn't we be willing to fight for America here? Because we have a country to save. But in order to do that, we've got to acknowledge some serious hard truths. Republicans have lost the last 7 out of 8 popular votes for president. That is nothing to be proud of. We should want to win the majority of Americans. But in order to do that, we're going to have a new generational conservative leader. We've got to leave the past headlines behind us, and we've got to look forward to these major threats that we have and come up with these solutions that we change with the times. That time is now. I know we can do it. But to do that, it's going to take a lot of courage. Courage from every single person here. Courage for me to run. And courage for every one of you to remember, don't complain about what happens in a general election if you don't play in this caucus. It matters. When I first announced that I was running for president, someone asked me, well, why are you doing this? And I said, you know, my parents came here 50 years ago to an America that was strong and proud and full of opportunities. I want them to know that country again. I'm doing this for my husband Michael and his military brothers and sisters because I want them to know their sacrifice does matter, that we do love our country. I'm doing this for my daughter who just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home. And I'm doing this for my son who's a senior in college, and I am tired of him writing papers of things he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not us. That's not America. And for the first time, 78% of Americans don't think their kids are going to have as good of a life as we have. That's not okay. We can't be okay with that. I'm not okay with that. We do have a country to save. But I'll make you this promise. If you will join in this fight for me, if you will join in this fight for America, I promise you that our best days are yet to come. Thank you very, very much. God bless you. So now we are going to open it up for questions. You know, first of all, I think we do need to give it to these fellows that happen to show up. Yes, I do like Taylor Swift. Yes, I do listen to Taylor Swift music, so there you go. Okay, who wants the first question? Andrew and Billy have microphones, so just raise your hand, they'll come to you. Yes, sir.
You're a very forward-looking candidate. I rejoice in that. I'm concerned about climate, though. It sounds like most of your opponents essentially are just, let's go back to fossil fuels, that's great. While we can't, instantly get rid of them, we do have to look forward and make a transition. What kind of climate policy would we see from President Haley?
And it's a lot of people that care about that. And what I want to say is, without asking any of you, we all care about the environment. We all want clean air, we all want clean water, and we all want a future for our children that we can know is going to be safe and ready. So that's the first thing is, yes, I do think climate change is real, but I think there is a way to go about doing it. What Biden is doing is wrong. He goes and he passes these green subsidies and this Inflation Reduction Act, where he says you're going to have, everybody's driving an electric car by 2035. One, it's not realistic. Two, he's not thinking about the infrastructure that goes into that. So, and I'm not even talking about charging stations. Electric vehicles are incredibly heavy. Our roads and bridges couldn't handle it if we all got to electric vehicle cars. So what is the answer? I am for an all of the above energy approach. We can do a transition. I don't have a problem of doing a transition, but it's gotta be done the right way. You don't do it by demonizing producers. You actually bring them in to help you with the innovation. They know what it means to go and create innovations. They just came out with nuclear fusion that will create more energy. We need to go and work with them and say, this is how we do it. But never forget, America does an amazing job at reducing emissions. If we really do care about wanting to clear the environment, and I can tell you I dealt with this up close and personal at the UN, we have to call out China and India on what they're doing. Their emissions are terrible. You know, when I was at the United Nations, I led the charge to get us out of the Paris Climate Agreement. And everybody says, oh, you know, she and the administration don't care about the environment. It was actually the exact opposite. We do care about it. The problem was every country had to say what their plan was to reduce emissions. And Obama had done it to where he gave all of these promises to heavily regulate our businesses, heavily regulate our industries, to where it was a huge burden, cost-wise and otherwise, on our businesses. China, do you know what theirs was? We'll deal with it in 10 years. I know China well enough. 10 years never comes. We need a fair situation. We need to unite the world and tell India and China, we've waited long enough. We've all done our part. It's time for you to start doing your part. And I will make that case very loudly. You look great in that shirt, by the way. I'm just going to say.
Thank you. Thank you. As president, what would you do for the mental status of this country?
I love that question.
I'm one that has mental status, and this country's broken, and I can't get the help that I need.
Well, and you know what I want to tell you? You are not alone. Because it used to be 1 in 4 Americans suffers from a mental health challenge. Today, it's 1 in 3. The problem is, in our country, we don't have enough mental health therapists. We don't have enough mental health treatment centers. If you don't get help with a mental health situation, you are at high risk for falling into addiction. If you had an addiction, we don't have enough addiction centers to help families get you clean either. And if you're lucky enough to get one of those 3, insurance won't cover any of that. And that's what this gentleman's going through right now. We have to acknowledge the cancer in America that everyone has refused to deal with, and that is the mental health crisis in America. So let's go a step further, because it's not just acknowledging, it's how do you fix it. The first thing we have to do is acknowledge that our whole healthcare system is an issue. How can we be the best country in the world and have the most expensive healthcare in the world? It's wrong. I take care of my parents. They live with us. They're 87 and 89. My mom was in the hospital, and when she was in the hospital, there was nothing more glaring than this. The nurse came over to her and offered her 2 Tylenol. And she said, I don't need it. And the nurse said, honey, you might as well take it because you're paying for it anyway. When we got the bill for her hospital visit, no one talked to us about the charges. The hospital and the insurance company negotiated those charges for us, and we were just supposed to be stuck with it and supposed to pay it. When I am president, this is going to be a major issue. We are going to open every industry up, from the insurance companies to the hospitals, to the doctor's offices, to the pharmaceuticals, to the PBMs. We're going to make them all transparent and make them show us the warts that they have. Because at the end of the day, the patient's been sitting in the back seat long enough. It is time for the patient to be in the front seat. It's time for us to let them decide what kind of health care we want and how it's going to be taken care of, and go to how it is like when you have your car getting fixed. You go to the mechanic, and what does the mechanic say? I can do a quick fix, it'll cost you this much. Or I can go ahead and fix the whole thing, and it's going to cost you this much. At the end of the day, we get to decide. We've got to get it to where the patient is back in the driver's seat. That's hugely important. That is a promise, and we've got to make sure that insurance covers the cancers in America so that people can get help, and that includes mental health. That is how we will take on mental health and health care in America. we just dealt with insurance, just insurance alone, we would cut healthcare costs in half. That's what we're talking about. Okay, where are you, Andrew? Yes, sir.
My name is Benjamin, and
Hi,
I am a public school teacher.
God bless you.
And I appreciate the, bringing skills back into the classroom. I love choice. Capitalism is what makes our country run. I think that's great. How do you balance a publicly funded organization? Because it's not a business, but yet you want that capitalism, you want that choice in education. So how do you balance a publicly funded system with that capitalistic mentality?
So that's a great question. And first of all, I seriously, God bless you for what you do. My son-in-law is a teacher as well. And let me tell you, you should really support every teacher there is, because they are now required to be the parent, the teacher, the guidance counselor, the pastor, the healthcare advisor, and everything in between. And oh, by the way, they make them teach to a test. And so we thank you for that. The first thing is we need to let you do your job. Teachers just want to teach. They don't want to do all of those other things. The way you do it is you really do have to take all of those programs from the Department of Education and push them down to the states. What that does is that reduces the strings attached, because really what the Department of Education says is we'll give you this money if you do X, Y, and Z. It will reduce the strings attached if we do block grants like that. It will allow people in that state to decide what they want that education to look like. We need basics, right? This needs to be about reading, science, history, math, and skills to take them in jobs for the future. We shouldn't be focused on DEI and CRT. We should be focused on financial literacy and critical thinking and digital literacy, because those are the issues that are going to come up with. And so if we go and do that, people who say they're going to abolish the Department of Education, you can't do it without Congress. But what you can do is you can move those programs down so that the states are now empowered to do that. That's what's going to, one, get rid of a lot of those employees at the Department of Education, but two, flood a lot more of those resources down to the states where we can better control how it's being spent.
One of your opponents has introduced a constitutional amendment that would raise the voting age. Number one, what do you think about that? And number two, how would you like to engage young voters?
Well, first of all, I will tell you, if you are old enough to go fight in a war, you should be able to vote, period. 18 years old, I want every 18-year-old to vote, because guess what? Everything that's happening right now affects your life. And I'll tell you, for your generation, I have two kids that are 22 and 25. Don't give up on this generation, because I truly believe this is the generation that's going to save us. They think differently than the way we were raised. They don't care as much about money. They care a lot more about being a part of the solution. They really want to be a part of something. They don't watch the news because they think both sides are crazy, and I don't know that they're wrong. They get a lot of their news from social media or from the internet, and they want to make sure that they are being heard. I hear you, because right now you're worried about the cost of education, you're worried about getting a job. The American dream is supposed to be that you can own a home, and that's out of pocket right now. It's too expensive to feed yourself or to drive a car. And at the end of the day, you want to know that there's an environment that's going to be safe and clean for you so that you have it. And so we owe that to you. We owe that to you. And so what I will tell you is we're winning a lot of your age group, because I think they know, one, I hear you, but two, I want to use you to be part of the solution. I don't want you being that group over there. You're the ones that are going to lead after we're done. So I want to make sure we lift you up and make sure that you're in the driver's seat when we go forward, because I do believe in you, and I do think that y'all are going to do great things for America.
Hi there, my name is Ariana Cutler. As a young Republican, I 100% agree. I do believe that both sides are a little crazy. But my question is, I love the fact that you call out other Republicans, especially on the COVID relief bill in 2020. However, I did a little bit of research and I found that you didn't support Thomas Macy, and I was curious for the reason why.
Thomas Macy. Thomas Massey, what am I not supporting?
COVID relief bill in 2020.
He was the only Republican against it.
He did, I'm not in Congress.
You still had a platform, you were a public figure.
I wasn't a public figure. In 2020, I was a private citizen.
On the board.
On the board of what?
Oh, weren't you? You were a former governor.
I'm absolutely a former governor. If you're asking me what I think about COVID, is that what you're asking me? Or COVID funding?
The 2020 COVID funding bill is what she's asking about.
I couldn't find any tweets or statements from you.
So, I mean, I'm happy to tell you where I stand on COVID or any of the COVID issues. I was a private citizen, so I was not in public office. I was not a governor at that time. But this is what I'll tell you. As a governor of South Carolina, we had and continue to have a lot of hurricanes, a lot of crises. We had 1,000-year flood, we had hurricanes, we had shootings, you name it, we had it. And what I found when you have a crisis is the best thing you can do is be transparent and tell your people the truth. So when we would have a hurricane, I would do 2 press conferences a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And I would tell everybody exactly what I knew. What we knew about the hurricane, when it was coming, the dangers it could do, what it could do to you afterwards. And then I would say, in my opinion, this is what I'm doing for my family. This is something for you to think about. But at the end of the day, I let people decide how to do it. What happened with COVID and what I think went wrong is any other time in history, disasters like that brought us together. And America got divided over it. Why did we get divided over it? Because you heard multiple things from multiple people. And we didn't trust what we were being told. What I think is really important, a leader and a president needs to put it all out there, give you all the ammunition and information you need, and then make sure you are empowered to do what you need to do. What I think was very wrong is Congress did exactly what they always do. They did this slew full of funding into COVID without looking at fraud, without looking at where it was going to go, without looking how much it was going to cost us, and oh, by the way, they added mandates to it. I think all of that was wrong. That's not how you do things. If you're going to do it, you focus on what does the citizen need? What do they need to survive? What do they need to protect their national security? And make sure nothing infringes on their freedoms. That's how I would handle a COVID going forward. And let's talk about bailouts too. Congress is very quick to throw out bailouts and stimulus packages. What we need to make sure Congress does is they now have to have a method. If you are going to do that, they need to have a platform of what they're going to fund, how they're going to fund, but how they're going to hold it accountable for taxpayers. Because right now, we're looking at $1 in $7 was spent fraudulently. We're looking at hundreds of billions of dollars still out there that hasn't been gotten back. We need to make sure we know what we're getting for our return investment. At the end of the day, when it comes to COVID, our job is to keep people safe. That's it, keep people safe. You don't make them pay anything more than they're supposed to. You don't mandate anything on their life to do it. You just keep them safe. And the best way to keep people safe is to educate them and give them the information. Am I looking? Okay.
We have time for one last question.
Make it a great one.
What are you going to do to ensure that we do not lose our electoral college?
You know, I think that with the entire election process, when we look at what happened, 2020 was an uncomfortable time because I think we saw a lot of secretaries of states do things without the authority of their legislatures. I think because so much was shut down, you had a lot of mail-out ballots, and people didn't trust what happened. And I think that everything was not on the up and up. Having said that, I think Biden won the presidency. That's been proven in every court case and in everything else he won. But we should learn from that. First, making sure we have election integrity. I hope every single state, we've seen a lot of states have enacted good voter ID laws, good transparency laws, making sure they're cleaning out their electoral rolls to make sure that dead people aren't voting, to make sure that we're not letting illegal immigrants vote. I mean, you should all worry about the fact that Biden just gave 500,000 Venezuelans temporary protective status, because guess what? They all now get social security numbers and they all now get driver's license. So you look at that, but I think that we have to go through and do whatever it takes to protect the integrity of the Electoral College, our election process, and everything along the way. And I think that we have to continue to do that. What we're seeing now is, I think this is gonna be a messy election again. I think that there's still gonna be some issues, and I think we have to find a way to make sure we look at exactly where the problem points are, and we do it in a way that's very transparent, and we do it in a way that people's voices are heard. But we want to keep the Electoral College in a good standing and make sure that it's always like that, and in any way that we can. But I think we can't assume everything's all great, but we can't assume that we can't trust it either. The answer is in the middle, and we have to continue to work on it every day to make sure that we hold it strong. Absolutely. No, and I think we have to do that. We have to make sure we keep the Electoral College. I think we have to make sure we continue to do election integrity. I think we have to make sure that people trust and they know exactly what they're gonna get. Look, I've seen many countries where the election process is a mess. And I've seen many countries where you see dictators, where they don't have elections, where they don't allow things to happen, all of those things. That can never be us, because we can't have an America that doesn't trust the system. And I want to make sure we always trust the system, and I agree with you. We'll do everything we can to keep a strong Electoral College. I'll leave you with this. So first of all, thank you for taking the time to spend your Saturday afternoon with us. You know, when I ran for that longest serving legislator in a primary, people laughed at me. And I got to work, and I earned their support, and we won. When I ran for governor, I ran against a lieutenant governor, an attorney general, a very popular congressman, and a state senator. I was Nikki Haley. I had 3% in the polls. I had the least amount of money. But I worked South Carolina like no one else, and we won. When I got to the United Nations, they said I didn't have enough experience. And so I got to work, and I took the kick me sign off of our backs. I have been underestimated in everything I've ever done. And it's a blessing, because it makes me scrappy. No one's gonna outwork me in this race. No one's gonna outsmart me in this race. So if you like what I had to say today, go tell 10 people. Tell them to go to NikkiHaley.com. We've got people here in the room that will help you if you decide you want to caucus for us or volunteer for us or do anything to spread the word. Give $5, $10, $25 today, whatever you can do to get this out there, because we do have a country to save. If you don't like what I've had to say today, just don't say anything and don't tell anyone you were here. God bless you. Thank you very much.